The first session is from Uruguay, Dr. Santiago Fariña and Dr. Alejandro Manna from INEA, Uruguay. Santiago Fariña is the Dairy Research Director for Dairy in INEA, and Alejandro Manna is a Senior Researcher in Animal Nutrition for Beef and Dairy. Alejandro Manna will be presenting on behalf of both of them. So I'll share presenter rights with Alejandro now.
Hello to everybody. Thank you, Nicolas. This first part should be Santiago, but apparently he is not able to communicate. So we're going to make a presentation from Uruguay. So background, Uruguay is south of South America. We have 3.5 million people, 3.8 thousand farmers, dairy farmers, 400,000 cows, 2.2 million tons of milk per year we produce. 70% of our milk is exported, and we are part of 4% of the global market of dairy. So the dairy research priorities is increasing homegrown forage per hectare with low cost per kilogram of milk solids. That's something we're looking for because because we export 70% of our milk. We are very dependent of international markets, and that makes quite a problem for us since we are not able to have an internal market enough to have a good price. So volatility is really high. So we need to have a homegrown forage. The second research priority is making dairy more attractive to new generations. We're having trouble to get people to work in the dairies. Usually they prefer another type of work. And the third is caring for land and water. So that's really important for us because environment it's a big issue in Uruguay. So robotic milking in Uruguay. First milking robot was installed in INEA, is where I work, which will be the National Institute for Agricultural Research, in September 2017. Currently only 2 commercial farms with robotic milking. We have one according to the feeding system, INEA pasture-based, and the other 2 are freestall and compost barn. The herd size is around 100, 120, and 180. We work on research. The other 2 are family-owned and operated, one, and the other one is staff-operated. That's the number of robots. Chia, Lely, are the main robots we have. And we have around 7,500 liters per cow per year. The freestall have 8,500 liters. And the commercial number 2 will be planned to start in a brief time. So adoption of AMS in Uruguay, the key drivers have been lifestyle and succession planning, productivity per cow, and farming automation. Since things this kind of equipment still is expensive for us, but it's getting each time cheaper. The key challenges that we have is the investment, which is really high, the adaptation to grazing in a subtropical region, and trade-off cows, robot versus milk per cow. So in our conditions, we usually work much more having a high carrying capacity or a lot of cows per hectare against not too much production per milk, because we are looking to increase the production of per hectare rather than per cow. This is a view, an aerial view from our automatic milking system, where you can see three systems, three ways, and a possible fourth way in here, where are the cows. We are in the southwest of Uruguay, and all these red dots that you see in the map are dairy farms, and where most of the dairy is developed in our country. If we see the farm layout, we will see that we have two robots. We did it for research purposes, so if you see the photo, it's a kind of mirror. So we're able to have work it each time when we do trials, work each robot independent. So cows don't interact or different treatments. And then in the map, you can see the three areas that we have for grazing, an area A, B, and C. And then we have a feed pad or resting area and special needs area for it. All the cows go through a ring, and they're able to this ring, which distributes the cows in the different lanes where we want to send the cows, to which area we want to send it or work with them. The first year, we decided to learn about how to use the robot and how there was no experience in Uruguay since we were the first one. So that's what we have: winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And usually around 70 cows, more or less, in average, in a milking platform that's around 35, or between 35 and 38 hectares, and a stocking rate, cows per hectare, of 1.6 to 2.2. So this is how we have been working. The milking frequency, number of cow per day, was around between 1.6 and 1.9, and the milk kilograms have been from 20 to 27, depending in the what season we are speaking about. We have to Uruguay has the 4 seasons, and we can see that the 4 seasons differentiated. So we have most of the growth of grass in spring, and the second will be autumn. So that's where we produce more grass. That's the fat and protein percentages that you can see, and then how much the diet has been during this performance of the first year, mostly pasture, and then we have fodder and concentrates, all expressed as kilogram of dry matter per cow per day. Down is the somatic soil count that we have and the mastitis as percentage of cases that we have been having during this first year as a performance. So the key projects or topics that we are looking or we are trying to explore. Where we started with a cow transition, studying what makes mainly behavior. There is a thesis on behavior, temperament, and protocol written, and it's an ongoing PhD. So what we're looking is how the cow makes the transition from conventional to voluntary milking, and see what changes in behavior we are seeing through the cow. This summer, there will be 15-20 days, we will start a heat stress mitigation effort. We will try heat stress trials, trial of heat stress, offering shades, but at different time of the day, and see if the cow moves to look for the shade or not, and what we can do to motivate that cow to move during that time. For next year, when we finish the investments, we're looking for one question that we have for our country, that is a farm system strategy. So we will work with 2 farmlets with similar productive target, around 2,300 liters per robot per day, but with contrasting strategies. But the objective will be to maximize robot use to be profitable. So we will have one of the farmers, we will look for aiming 2 milkings, a higher number of cows per robot. We're thinking around 85 more or less cows per robot. Lower stocking rate per hectare, but we will have more hectares and more laneways in order to repair and to work. So there will be different investments. This looks much more like usually production in Uruguay. And the other one is aiming 3 milkings, a lower number of cows per robot, around 2/3 of the cows of 8, but we will have a higher stocking rate per hectare and much more concentrate. So we will be trying both systems and trying to see if we are able in a partial grazing to be able to have 3 milkings and a higher production, and then try to put the numbers or economic numbers to these 2 systems. Usually the investment in Uruguay of the robot is really very expensive for us, getting in proportion to our production. So what we are looking for mainly is to use that robot the more we can. Key things that we need to be, we think need to be explored for our future, and is this kind of system approach, so we can give much more idea to our farmers on what would be the difference in type of using what system would be work better, which would be more profitable according to their conditions. We need to understand much more the cow behavior in subtropical grazing conditions. We are working a lot with sensors and pasture feeding animal, remote sensing, and integrated for decision making. So we're trying at the same time working with this, with different type of sensors, and trying to integrate all this information in possible models. There is one thing that we have been asked is to see feasibility and profitability of hybrid farm systems, conventional and plus AMS, and the high investment of some of the high investment in farms to have a robot. Usually the question is, can I have a robot or a couple of robots for my high producing cows and then continue the conventional with less cows, so I don't have to do all the investment at the first time? That's a type of question we have been asked many times. We still have running in our research station the conventional, so we're looking for what happens if cows go, if some of the cows go back to conventional, and then what they need to come again and starting the robot. But going back to the conventional, we don't think it would be a problem. We want to know what happens if they can get used again, which I think that yes, but if they can get used again to an AMS. And the other things is, other key things we need to be explored is what would be the pasture crop sequences, what type of pasture crop rotation for optimum cow traffic and homegrown feed yield. And that is very important for us because it's the heart of our system, is the pasture crop. Unfortunately, our pastures don't live more than 4 to 5 years, so we need to be rotating with some crops. So that's what would be the best for having always the cows motivated to work. And then we need to understand what motivates the cow to walk distance to or from the pasture over 1 kilometer. Many times in our conditions, cows may walk even 2 kilometers. So we need to understand if they are able to move. Our pastures are productive, but not that productive. So many times they need to walk to the pasture. And finally, with this photograph, these cows are 800 meters, where is in the back there is the robot, and the cows go and count by themselves from there. So we want to know how we can motivate them to walk, what will happen during the different seasons, what will happen during summer, and what will happen during cold conditions. So that's part of our idea. And with this, I will leave it open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, for that. That was really very insightful. A lot of good information and work that has been done, but also in the pipeline moving forward. So thank you very much for that. We've got a couple of questions that came through. The first one is, how do you manage heat stress? Like what strategy are you using to manage heat stress?
What we have seen is after 10 o'clock in the morning, the cow won't move from the pasture, even if they know that they have shade near the robot. So we are trying to think of when they come last time at night or during the night, to go already to a part where they will have feed and shade, and that's part of our next trial. And we're trying to manage that way and see if we are able. And the other ones, we will try to motivate them, but they won't have access to shade until 10 o'clock in the morning. And then from 3 o'clock afterwards in the afternoon, if they move, they can go to the pasture, even if it is hot, so we don't expect them to move, but they will be open the gate for that. So in reality, we are trying to learn how to work with heat stress with the robot. We have been working with heat stress before in conventional, and we have even our temperature humidity index is average is around 72, 71, 72 during the summer with hot days. We are trying to see how we can motivate the cow to walk the distance to get into the pasture. So we don't have a good answer for that.
Excellent. Thank you for that one. I think it was a good answer. You don't have maybe the full answer on how to manage the heat stress, but I think there are a lot of good ideas behind that answer. There's another question on supplementation. So if you can explain a bit about the PMR and the supplementation, and also what is the relationship between pasture and concentrate? So how much concentrate are you giving in the daily ration?
Yes, the concentrate usually we have some concentrate in the robot, not too much, but it's given some concentrate, and then we have some feeding stations. Immediately afterwards, they go through the robot, so kind of a motivation there where they can get 2 or 3 kilograms, and then we have during winter, for example, the cows will eat around 8 kilograms of concentrate, and during summer, during spring and summer, that will be much less, around 3 or 2 kilograms per cow. Then the rest will be mainly depending of the day, that's not rainy, because of the pasture. We will be working much more with trying the cow to pick from the pasture from the paddock directly. So in reality, will be around 300 grams, more or less average of concentrate per kilogram of milk.
Excellent. And you can adjust that per cow, or you're adjusting per cow, those levels of concentrate?
Yes, with the feeding stations, we are able to adjust the concentrate. Not in the PMR, because they are not arriving all at the same time, but they're more or less there. They can eat whatever they want, because it's offered for all the group. But the difference, we can make it in the feeding station.
Perfect. And the last question is, where are the water locations on the farm? Are they near the AMS or in the paddocks?
Well, what we have read about is not using water in this type of grazing pasture where the cows walk a lot. So don't use water to motivate the cows. So we have them in the paddock and near the robot, not around the robot, but quite near. So what we have is them. We are not using water to motivate it to go through the. In our case, no, because the distances are really very big, and we want the cows to be able to graze as much as they can. So we're looking more for the paddock in the water in the paddock. Sorry.
Excellent. Well, Alejandro, I think that was a really good presentation. I don't know if you have any other final comment that you would like to make. I think you've provided a good overview of not only the great work you are doing, but also how does this fit into a context of not only the Uruguayan conditions, but also grazing and how to incentivize cows to move in a grazing system, with good questions around heat stress adaptation and grazing more subtropical pastures. So congratulations on the great work. And I don't know if you have any other comment that you would like to make.
No, the only comment is thank you, Nicolas, for giving all of us this opportunity to exchange ideas and to hear other people working. So I think it's a really excellent idea, and I would like to congratulate you all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was an idea, but it wouldn't be possible without all of you volunteering your time and your knowledge and expertise. So once again, thank you for your presentation today. Thank you, Santiago, also, that I know had technical issues to connect online. He's listening, but we had some glitches to make him speak. But you did a very good job representing the work of all the team. So thank you very much. And we'll be in touch, and we'll move on now to the next presentation. Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you, Nicolas. Thanks.